Rabbosai, here we go. Okay, sorry everybody that I did not give my shiur this past Sunday. I ran into a mitzvah she'ef sharlasis alidei acherim that I had to take care of, and therefore I wasn't able to give it, but we are going to give it tonight instead. Okay, so here we go. We're going to continue in Hatmana. What is Hatmana? Hatmana is, once again, that is insulating a pot of food with a material that either keeps in heat or maybe even adds heat. So we said that there's around 7 potential heterim for Hatmana. Let's run through them quickly without getting into major detail, and then let's continue in our case studies and find out if that naval pastrami is okay, if that Kishka is okay, if the sous vide is okay. Let's get it done. Okay, so once again, one heter for Hatmana is if the item is not completely wrapped, according to Ashkenazim at least, it is not Hatmana. If an item is, the insulator is not touching the pot, let's say it's just hanging over the pot, but there's ear space in between the pot and let's say the towel that's hanging over, that is not Hatmana. Third heter is, let's say you had something that was insulated and the towel fell off in the middle of Shabbos, you could go and put that towel back on, or you took it off, let's say. You took off that towel to give for the little kids some soup, you are allowed to re-insulate it on Shabbos. Heter number 4, you are allowed to insulate in a kli sheni. Heter number 5, if the food is not yad soletis by, it's under, let's call it 110 Fahrenheit, and it is, so, and there's some makom tzarech, which is usually the case that we're asking these shaylos. So there is, you are allowed to do hatmana on such a scenario. Next, we said, but even though it's not so applicable, but during ben hashmashas, you are allowed to do hatmana as long as you weren't makabel Shabbos. However, you're supposed to have been makabel Shabbos already at that point. So, but once again, that's for that crazy Erev Shabbos where the car breaks down and you walk in and you this and you that and everything's running late and crazy and whatever. For that Erev Shabbos, you could do Hatmana during Ben HaShemashos. Number 7, if you're, and this is going to be very important, if you're not doing the Hatmana for the sake of Hatmana, but rather you're doing the Hatmana, you're wrapping the pot in order to protect it from rats, or that it won't get dirty or something like that, then there is no Hatmana. Because Hatmana is only Hatmana when you're doing it for the sole kavana of keeping in the heat. Once you have other kavanas involved, you want to keep the rats away, you want to keep the dirt away, it is not Hatmana. Now that we are all on the same page, and we're all equal, we all have all the facts, let's try to understand some basic questions. And some not so basic questions. So the question number 1 is, your potato in your cholent, right? You have a cholent, right? Inside your cholent you have a potato? Yes. Now, is that Hatmana? What do you mean is that Hatmana? It's cholent. Well, let's take a step and think about it. Is the Hatmana, is the potato in a kli rishon? Yes. Is it completely surrounded? Yes. Is it keeping the potato hot? Well, yeah, I guess so. So it's completely surrounded in a kli rishon, keeping it hot. Is that mice of hevel? Is there, whether it's on in a crock pot or whether it's on a hot plate, is it mice of hevel? Is it getting hotter? Yeah. So even if you made that cholent before Shabbos, surely that potato inside the cholent is the issur Hatmana. Now we know it's not an issur Hatmana. We all know it can't be. But the question is why? Why is it not an issur Hatmana? Why not? L'chayra meets all the criteria. So there's 2, 3, depending on your count it, we'll call it 3 terutzim that I was thinking of as to why it's not Hatmana. Reason number 1 is It's not surrounded by anything. What do you mean it's not surrounded by anything? Surely it is surrounded. It's surrounded by beans. It's surrounded by barley. It's surrounded by water. It's surrounded by salt. Don't worry, I'm not going to give away the secret recipe. It's surrounded by all the good zachen, eh? So what do you mean it's not surrounded? No, it is cholent. It's not a potato. It's cholent, and once it's cholent, so the cholent isn't surrounded by anything. It might be a potato, but it's a cholent, and it's not. We don't view it as an individual potato. We view it as a small part of a larger cholent, and the cholent is not surrounded by anything. That's the first possibility. The second is, which is not so simple to understand, but the act that you're doing. How do we classify the act that you're doing? It is classified as an act of cooking, not an act of insulating, not an act of hatmana. And if we classify your act as an act of cooking and not an act of hatmana, therefore hatmana doesn't apply. Option number 3, which is going to sound a little bit similar to option 2, but the lamdanim will pick up on the difference, that your intention of putting the potato in the cholent. If I asked you, why did you put the potato in the cholent? Are you going to tell me, well, I wanted to make sure it stays warm? No, that's not what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me the reason why you put the potato in the cholent was because you want to cook the potato. Just like we said when you do hatmana, but your intention is you want to protect it from the rats, you want to protect it from the dirt. That isn't hatmana. So over here, perhaps you actually are doing hatmana. But since your kavana was not a kavana of hatmana, rather your kavana was a kavana of cooking, therefore it is allowed. So now just for the lamdanim, let's contrast the second answer and the third answer. The second answer was you weren't doing a mesa hatmana, you were doing mesa cooking. The third answer is, no, you really did do a mesa hatmana. But since your kavana was for cooking, it is not considered hatmana. Gishmak. Okay. Now let me ask you another question. Can I take a wrapped up kishka or a wrapped up potato kugel, stick it, submerge it into the cholent before Shabbos, Erev Shabbos? Like a good Jew, I want to stuck my kishka in the cholent, and then Shabbos I'll have some gishmaka cholent and gishmaka kishka. Gishmaka, potato kugel from the cholent. Cholent potato kugel. Is that allowed? Is there a problem? Now let's think about it for a second. Now if the potato kugel and kishka are not completely submerged, let's say the potato kugel and kishka are only on the, they're half in the cholent, half on top of the cholent. So as we discussed previously, for Ashkenazim, we say that hatmana b'mixas lo yishmei hatmana. A partial hatmana is not hatmana, as the Ramah says. If it's megul malal, if it's revealed on the top, it is not considered hatmana. Therefore, over here it's not completely submerged, and therefore it is not hatmana. So then we're good. But what if you like shtupping in the kishka rain? You want it to be inside the cholent, which a lot of people do. They submerge the kishka or the potato kugel, the wrapped up kishka, the wrapped up potato kugel. They submerge it in the cholent. Should that be allowed? Now let's think about it. Is it completely surrounded by an insulator? Yeah. We're talking about completely submerged. Is it in a kli rishon? Yeah. Is it moisef hevel? Is there a heat being added to that? Yeah. Oh, that doesn't sound so good. What do I do about that? Let's look at the poskim a little bit. So the Taz says, if you submerge a kli of food, right? If you get into a larger kli of food, it's hatmana and it's aser. But they're probably not talking about the kishka and the potato kugel, right? Why? I don't know. Is that the Aruch HaShulchan? The Aruch HaShulchan says, do you believe it? There are people out there that take a kli of kugel and they submerge it into the cholent. Could you believe it? And I don't know why people are doing this, because it's aser, it's hatmana. So we have two Chidushim here. First Chiddush is the cholent and the potato kugel and the cholent is not a new shtick. The Aruch HaShulchan knew about this. But the bigger Chiddush is that the Aruch HaShulchan said it's issur, but there's so many people that do it. What's going on? So Shlomo Zalman says, no, it's allowed. He's going to argue in the Aruch HaShulchan. Maybe not argue in the Aruch HaShulchan. Maybe what we do is a little different. Let's explain. Now, the Aruch HaShulchan was talking about sticking the kli of potato kugel in. We usually wrap it up. Or if it's in a kli, our kli is a little aluminum tin. Is that really considered a full-fledged kli? Doesn't make any difference. Was the kli just the example, or was the kli an important part of his storyline? Let's investigate. So Shlomo Zalman says it's fine. It's like you're cooking two items on one flame. We don't view it as if you're insulating the kishka in the cholent. We look at this one source of heat, whether it's your plata, blech, or crockpot, however you make your cholent. We don't view it as you're insulating your kishka. Rather, we view it as if you're cooking cholent and you're cooking kishka on one heat source. And that is allowed. Now, this is certainly an element, somewhat of a chiddush, because at the end of the day, it seems like you're doing insulating. But I guess the kavanah is two separate meises of cooking, and therefore it's allowed. Chiddush of Shlomo Zalman. Fine. The Shraga Meir, Sefer, on some of Hilch Shabbos stuff, cooking, and the Debetziner, they are mater. But they say it a little bit differently. They say it's derech bishul, not derech hatmana. So what you're doing is cooking. You're cooking the combo. So why is it wrapped in foil if you're cooking the combo? If it's one thing, meaning they're viewing it as no, it's a little different. Rav Shlomo Zalman is saying you're cooking two separate items. The Den Betziner is saying you're cooking one item. You're cooking. It's part of the. It's part of the cholent. It's like you're cooking one item. So if it's part of the cholent, so why do you have a tinfoil? Why do you have the tinfoil wrapping it up if it's part of the cholent? Well, that's just so it doesn't fall apart. The kishka would fall apart. But it's really like one thing. Shlomo Zalman was viewing it as two separate entities, one heat source. The Metziner is a little bit different. It's viewing it as one greater item, but you need the aluminum foil so it doesn't fall apart. Okay. I'm sure you can hack the differences, but they're not so different. Another pshat is it might boil down to the same, but I don't think it is. And this is something that really I heard Rav Kala say. It's really Rav Yashiv kind of says it as well. When you make kishka and you stick it into the cholent, or when you make that cholent kugel, that kugel, potato, and you stick it in the cholent, what's your kavanah? Is your kavanah merely to keep the kishka warm, to keep the potato kugel warm? I don't think so. I have a different kavanah. You know what my kavanah is? I want the delicious, yummy, Einik Shabbos take a taste of that cholent to go into my potato kugel. I want that flavor of the cholent to go into my kishka. And therefore, once I have the kavanah of imbuing taste, or at least imbuing color, from the cholent into my kishka or kugel, Mimela, it's not just about Hatmana, there's an alternate kavanah, and therefore it's mutter. Rav Yashiv says you should poke some holes in the aluminum foil because to ensure that there's flavor transferred from the cholent into the kishka. So poke some holes so the flavor transfers. Now I wouldn't dare argue on Rav Yashiv on a Gemara. I wouldn't argue on Rav Yashiv in the Ritva. No way. Not a chance. But I think I could argue with Rav Yashiv about cholent. I think I'm more into cholent than maybe Rav Yashiv was. Yesh tefalpel b'zeh. You can debate on this. But I think even without poking holes into that aluminum foil, there is still transfer of taste to that kishka and to that potato kugel. And since I think there's still transfer of taste, Mimela, I think those holes do not need to be poked. But one thing that I am masking is instead of single wrapping that Kishka potato kugel, you triple wrap it. Now already we're into a problem. Meaning once you do more wrapping than is necessary to, keep it from falling apart and keeping it, sturdy. Once you're doing extra, why are you doing extra? And once again, I wanted to be mechalik between two people. There's the guy who he triple wraps it because that's just what he does. He cuts a big piece of aluminum foil and he just wraps up. And it's not like a cheshbon thing that he triple wrapped it. That's just like the way that you do it. That's not as bad because he might still have kavana of flavor transfer. Why do you use so much aluminum foil? I don't know, because it's aluminum foil. But for sure, the guy who triple wrapped it, because listen, I don't want it to get all cholenty, and I want to just keep it warm, and that's why you're triple wrapping it. That I think would be a problem. Okay.
Well, Yashim is presumably asking to poke holes to show a miso of intending the flavor transfer rather than facilitating it.
Well, I think we don't need to show anybody. I mean, once you have that kavana, it's mutter. L'chaira. Okay. Now let's get to something that might even be better than cholent. I think it is. How about, can you make a naval pastrami on Shabbos? I mean, you're making it before Shabbos, but to eat it on whether it's Leil Shabbos or Shabbos morning. What is a naval pastrami? A naval pastrami, and it's like also in America, the pastramis that you have at a carving station. The pastrami, it comes in a thick plastic. And what you do is you stick it into hot water. And it stays in that hot water from before Shabbos till it's you have a Shabbos day. It will stay all the way till Shabbos day in that hot water. Then you pick out the plastic bag that has a naval pastrami. In this point, the pastrami the juices have already come out of the pastrami into its bag, and it's actually cooking in its own juices. And it doesn't lose any juice. So it's very, very soft and very delicious. And then you cut up in the plastic bag, and you cut it up, and you serve it. A naval pastrami, or a carving station pastrami. Can you make that on Shabbos? So let's think about it. It's sitting in the water, in the plastic bag, in the water before Shabbos. And by the way, I'm going to speak about another thing, which is very similar. I'll just speak about it together. There's something that's become more popular in recent years called the sous vide. It's not spelled the way it's pronounced. Okay, fine. A sous vide. So what is a sous vide for the unacquainted? It's a French-style cooking that has landed in the shores of America. It has yet to swim over the ocean to Eretz Yisrael, as far as I know. But it's definitely made its way to America, where it's like a tub. It could be a plastic container, it could be a metal pot of water. It has an immersion heater in this tub of water, and you keep it at a over yatz lettuce bulb, a relatively low cooking temperature. It's a big pot of water. You take a meat, like some sort of a roast or something like that, you put it in a plastic bag, you seal the plastic bag, and you dump that plastic bag into the water. Now it cooks at a perfect temperature, a low temperature. The juices from the roast stay in the plastic bag, and the meat cooks in its own juices in the plastic bag. And then, it's meant to be uniform style cooking, and everything is cooked evenly, and fine. So, could you do the navel pastrami or the sous vide roast on Shabbos? So, let's think about it. I mean, you definitely can't stick it in on Shabbos, that's obvious. But could you stick it in on Erev Shabbos? So, let's think about it for a second. Is the bag of meat completely surrounded by water? So once again, if you're doing it in the classical way without trying to avoid Hatmana, the answer is yes. It's completely surrounded by water. I would say for the navel pastrami, right now, here's your way out. If you leave it a little bit out of the water and you're Ashkenazi, so it's Hatmana b'mixas, and therefore it should be allowed. If you I think the sous vide, I'm not sure how practical it is to leave it all out of the water. I'm not sure. I'm not a big sous vide guy. If it is practical, then that's the way to do it. But I think it's not so practical. And if it's not so practical, so this won't help. Okay. But, so it's meant to be completely submerged. Is it a kli rishon? Yes. The heating element's in the water. It's a kli rishon. It's a kli rishon. It's completely submerged. And why is it? And is it keeping it hot? Is it moist of hevel? Yes. Sounds pretty bad, huh? Is there a heter to have a naval pastrami that isn't sticking out of the water, or a sous vide on Shabbos? So, sounds pretty bad. Remember the Kishka we were matter. Why were we matter the Kishka? So the reason why we were matter the Kishka is because I want the Kishka to get the flavor of the cholent. Over here, you have a plastic bag that's making sure that the water does not get into the meat. You do not want the water, and it can't. There's no taste of the water that's getting into the meat. So therefore, you don't have that whole heter that you have by the Kishka. And you're not cooking navel pastrami and I'm cooking water. You're not cooking sous vide meat and cooking water. No, you're only cooking the meat. And you don't want any flavor transfer. So you don't have any of the heterim that we said by Kishka. Maybe you have that one heter that we discussed. You're cooking, but you're not insulating. But we said before, we don't really understand that svara because, you're cooking, but once it's cooked, then it's insulating to keep it there. Meaning, maybe in theory, if it needed exactly, 14 hours of cooking, and you set it up in a way that I was getting 14 hours of cooking right to your Shabbos meal, and that's when you needed it, maybe you could tell you're doing a mesa cooking, not a mesa hatmana. But surely in most scenarios, it switches at a point from being a mesa cooking to mesa hatmana. But I agree that's debatable, and even that whole heter is very questionable. So is there any heter? So one heter is, the Chazon Ish says there's no hatmana in water. And over here, the plastic bag is in water, of meat is in water. So the Chazon Ish, Chiddush of the Chazon Ish, there's no hatmana in water. The problem is, the Mishnah Berurah clearly says there is hatmana in water. So, mefurish. So, in this way, the Chazon Ish is being more makel than the Mishnah Berurah, but most of us were not taking the Chazon Ish's chumras. And remember, the Chazon Ish says hatmana b'miksa shmei hatmana like the Sfardim. So we don't want to follow the Chazon Ish on hatmana. That would be annoying. I wouldn't even be able to use a crockpot if I do that. That won't be cool. So forget the Chazon Ish. So Mishnah Berurah, it's a problem. So we're not going to really be able to use that as a heter. So to me, it sounded pretty bad. I saw Simcha ben Cohen in his sefer, the Shabbos Kitchen, the Art School Shabbos Kitchen sefer. So he says, there's reason to issur the sous vide. And he quoted that there are many authorities that are makel. They allow the plastic bag because it's not insulating, it's allowing the meat to retain its flavor. So therefore the plastic bag is allowed. Now when I read this, I'm like, huh? What? I don't have a problem with the plastic bag. I have a problem with the water. The plastic bag's not a problem. It's just keeping the juices in. I know, as I said previously, every food is entitled to its container. Hatmana is insulating the container. Over here, the container is the plastic bag. So the water is we have a problem with the plastic bag. So I assume what he's trying to say, and reading the notes, this is what I assume Reb Simcha ben Mekom was going at, which to me sounds like a big chiddush. It's cooking in water. It's cooking in the water. So what's the plastic bag doing? The plastic bag is just a side thing to keep in the juices. But it's one item. It's a meat bag. And the meat bag is cooking in the water. And if you have a meat bag cooking in the water, it's just one item cooking, and therefore it's allowed. Now, I don't like the svara, personally, because the idea of the sous vide is to, in a way, you're heating up the juices of the meat, which is cooking the meat. To say that you're just cooking a one item called a meat bag, if all you had to cook was the meat, you stick the meat in. It's a meat bag? No, it's meat that has a bag holding in the juices so it can cook in its own juices. And therefore, I don't think the tzara is pashut, but at least there is a heter, so, maybe you don't need to get into a fight with the shviger about it, but it's not pashut. Okay. So, okay. A couple of additional points I just want to throw out there in Hatmana. Now, if an item was insulated, and then one takes off it was insulated on the onset of Shabbos, and you realize, oh shucks, oh shucks, I forgot it's a Kalbach Shabbos at Shul, and you want to go, davening's going to be forever, you give the chicken soup to the kids, and you didn't have kavana of re-insulating, it wasn't biyadai, no problem. You do not need, just the clarification point, you do not need the rules of Chazara to re-insulate it. Even if you weren't planning on re-insulating it, even if it wasn't biyada, you're allowed to re-insulate that pot. Okay. And if it was covered with one insulation, you're allowed to add another blanket on Shabbos. That's another Kaddish. Now, let's say somebody did Hatmana. Do you need to undo it? So, from this Krell it says, by Einay Moisif Hevel, by Hatmana that it was done just to keep it in the heat, so you can leave it, you don't have to undo it. There's nothing to kanas. There was nothing positive created. So therefore there's nothing to kanas and you don't have to take it off. Rosh Zalman says, if somebody left a towel on the kli, and it wasn't completely surrounding the kli, right? Let's say it was surrounding 3/4, and then whatever happened on Shabbos, it fell, and now it's completely surrounding the kli. So it started off okay, and now it's not okay anymore. We're talking about, let's say, Moisef Hevel, there's on a plata, right? So Zat Rav Shama Zalman, you need to take it off. Why? Marasayin. People are going to think that, you went and did it, and you're allowed to do it. So therefore, al Marasayin, you have to take it off. Now, the Chayr is a kasha on Rav Shama Zalman. Wait a second, the Shulchan Aruch itself says that you're allowed to wrap it up to protect it from rats. What about the Marasayin? You're allowed to wrap it up to protect it from dirt. What about the Marasayin? Obviously, we don't care about Marasayin. So how come over here Rosh Zalman is concerned about Marasayin? But I think we could give a teretz to that kasha. That was the kasha that Kalas asked. But I think I have a teretz to his kasha. By the case when he's insulating it, but protecting it from rats or protecting it from dirt, somebody who sees the situation could say, "Oh, he's insulating it. Oh, but maybe he's protecting it from rats. Maybe he's protecting it from dirt." But over here, when it's on your plata, covered by a towel, what are you going to say? Nobody's going to have. There's no other kavana to put in place, and therefore you don't assume some accident happened, and therefore that could be the chiluk. I agree it's a fine chiluk, but I think the chiluk is there. Fine. Now, once Hatmana is done, even if it is done issur, there is, it's almost always never going to be asur b'achila. You're never going to ask for the food from Hatmana. Why? Because we apply any of the heterim of shehiyah. We don't lechatchila apply it, but there's stadim in the Rishonim, there's stadim that any of the heterim of shehiyah would apply to Hatmana. So therefore, if it was completely cooked before Shabbos, it's fine. If it was, even if it was half cooked before Shabbos, there would be no issur Hatmana on it. So if it's for Shabbos day, then we're not going to ask for the food. When I say no issur Hatmana, I'm saying post facto. Once it was cooked, so it needs to be something that before Shabbos was less than halfway cooked, or probably even less than a third of the way cooked at the onset of Shabbos. But you're doing it for Friday night with none of the other heterim possible. Bekitzer, you need the Vilna. You need the Vilna Mechal Shabbos to make food asur with Hatmana. What do I mean Vilna Michal Shabbos? You know about the Vilna Apikurs? You ever heard about the Vilna Apikurs? So there's a guy who said, I like going to the bar. I don't like going to shul. I'm done with yeshiva. I'm done with kosher. I'm a Apikurs. So they said, oh, you're Apikurs. Why don't you go learn by Yankala the Apikurs? He said, that's a great idea. Where is he? He's in Vilna. So the guy travels to Vilna to go to Yankel the Apikurs. And he goes, checks all the bars, asking around, where's Yankel? Where's Yankel? Nobody knows where Yankel is. He starts asking some from people, where's Yankel the Apikurs? They point to the Beis Medrash. He goes to the Beis Medrash and he sees this guy there, sitting there, with a long white beard, with a frock, no yarmulke. He has in front of him open a Mar Nevuchim, and a couple of other Rambams open, Shar Yichud, and the guy says, "You're Yankel the Apikurs?" And he says, "Sure, I'm Yankel the Apikurs." And so the guy says to him, "Oh, great! I want to learn from you. I'm also Apikurs." So Yankel asked him, "Do you know Shas?" He says, "No." "Do you know Navi?" "No." He says, "You're not Apikurs. You're Amoritz." So the Amoritz is not going to be able to asur food with Hatmana. You need the Vilna Michal Shabbos to be able to get all it that it's asur according to all opinions is pretty much impossible unless you're actually going for it. So therefore, l'meisa on a practical level, when Hatmana is done on Shabbos, the food will still be mutter. And thank you for listening.